Hi friends, this is Trish and welcome to Teacher Therapy. This video is for any teacher out there that wants to quit, but you know you can't yet. I felt like that basically for all 8 years of being a teacher, so I picked up some tips and tricks that kind of helped me push through and stay in the game for as long as I could. Apparently what I was doing actually has a name and it's called quiet quitting. When I think about quiet quitting, I think about ways to manage my energy and manage my expectations so that I can endure a difficult situation. Typically, people quit a job when it becomes so stressful or they become so overwhelmed that the thought of leaving the job means an instant relief of that stress. But what if there was ways that you could get an instant release of stress without quitting? Well, that is where quiet quitting comes in. So I have 21 tips for you. Some of these are serious, some of them are a little bit lighthearted, and some might even be a little tiny bit controversial. But as you're listening, I would love for you to think of your own tips and tricks that you've used because we want to support each other as a community. So without further ado, let's jump in. Number 1, you want to simplify lesson planning. As a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed teacher, sometime I would spend 6 to 10 hours a week just poring over resources and trying to come up with things from scratch and reinventing the wheel. But eventually I caught on to the fact that there are literally millions of free resources on the internet. And I thought to myself, why am I taking so much time to recreate things from scratch when I could literally find things that a brilliant teacher already made? So I did this for everything. I would find homework online, I would find PowerPoints online, I would find entire units online, and I'm sure you've heard of things like Teachers Pay Teachers, but I found a secret hidden gem with this thing called Scribd. It's kind of like an online library, but people can upload their own PDFs, so I found utter gold on that site. And I would even find whole entire workbooks that I could just download and work with. So just something for you to think about. Another thing you could do is just simply use the curriculum you're given if you have one. I know that I spent so much time being irritated about how dumb I thought a lot of our resources were that I was constantly, again, trying to remake things. But sometime if you can't beat them, join them, use what they've given you, and at the bare minimum, that could give you back several hours in your week. Number 2, if you want to take more of a risk, you can scratch the first one and do this. Teach what you want, how you want, and ask for forgiveness rather than permission. I honestly did this a lot. There were so many things that we were told to do that I just thought were ridiculous that I basically did what I wanted unless somebody happened to be observing me, then I might, break out whatever strategy the district said we were supposed to be using, or I would teach it to the students enough so that if somebody came in to observe me, I could say, oh, look, you guys, we're going to do our cooperative learning groups. And the kids knew what I was talking about, so they didn't all stare at each other and say, what is that? But I mean, I was kind of like a boss at pretending that I was doing the ridiculous things the school district wanted me to do and actually kind of doing what I wanted. But like I said, this one's a little bit riskier. The whole idea behind quiet quitting is not getting fired, but doing a good enough job where you can have recommendations to move on in the future. But if you're skilled and if you're brave, you can probably get away with teaching your way. Apparently in the older days, they would say just shut your door and teach. But I get with all the observations, depending on your school district, that might be a little harder. Number 3 is don't do anything extra. I'm talking no committees, no volunteering, no tutoring. This one will be difficult if you have trouble saying no, but there was at least one year I could think of in particular that I was so overwhelmed and stressed, and the principal wanted to make me the head of the parental involvement committee, and it was one of those situations where I was voluntold. To me, that literally stressed me out so bad because A, I felt like dealing with parents by itself was stressful. But B, I don't really love leading other adults and trying to chase people down to get people to do stuff. And C, I don't think I was going to get paid an extra penny for chairing a whole committee. So basically, I just sat down with my administrator and I was super honest with her. I said, I have a lot going on. I'm really stressed. I'm dealing with some personal challenges. Is there any way that you could give this job to somebody else? I mean, I wish I could, but can you help me please? And she was kind and she agreed and let somebody else do it. There's also been a lot of years that there was a lot of pressure to do tutoring after school, but they technically couldn't make us. They could just kind of email out threats I want to see all of 6th sixth grade team signed up for tutoring. But that's where you kind of have to know your rights. If they can't contractually make you do extra things, then you have to kind of put your foot down and just say no. Unless it's something that you truly love and it's life-giving and it's enjoyable and it's going to make your day better. But even then, if you're quiet quitting, maybe you could save that energy for something non-work related. Number 4, match the energy and enthusiasm of the students. Now, I know some people will have some feelings about this one, but I'm going to be really honest with you. There were years where I felt like I was working and just running circles around students. I was just working so hard to drum up all this energy and passion and enthusiasm and excitement, and they would just like sit and stare and drool. And not because I'm beautiful, like the kind of drooling you do before you fall asleep. And it got really old because anybody that's like a public speaker or teacher or anything, you really feed off of the energy that you're given back. So it got really difficult. It felt like being a stand-up comic of a really tough crowd that just like everything was falling flat. And sometimes when I taught middle school, I would only have certain groups like that. Like certain groups were kind of enthusiastic and they were like with me, and other groups were the too cool for school kids that just like slumped and stared at me. So eventually I started adjusting my energy level. I thought, hey, if they're not going to be excited, then I'm not going to wear myself out and drain myself of all my energy so that I'm in a bad mood by the end of the day. So I just kind of toned it down for the groups that didn't care, and I turned it up for the groups that did. Now, if you're an elementary teacher, you could kind of think about this too in terms of your student interactions. Maybe you have a group of kids that loves to learn and they're excited. Is it possible that you could spend a little bit more time helping those students and maybe divert your focus away from kids that just don't care? And I know that that's going against like every teacher commandment there is, but in the real world, you kind of have to figure this out for yourselves. There's going to be some students that you can invest all the energy in the world, but for whatever reason, they're just not able to like connect with school and get excited. And there's going to be other students that actually really need your energy. They would really benefit from that one-on-one time and that help. And I just think it's a better use of energy to look for those students. And who knows, there's been times where I noticed that some of the kids that seemed not to care got more invested when they realized that I was paying attention to students that did care, because sometimes kids not caring is a ploy for attention, but when you don't reward that negative behavior, you never know, turnarounds might happen. Number 5 is don't do silly extras. So this one's also a little risky, but I was the queen of this. So I'm talking things like writing brand new standards and I can statements on the board, doing all of these like tracking charts. I'm talking, to me, anything that I deemed a silly extra, I just didn't do it. Or I would leave the same standards and I can statements up for like 3 months and nobody noticed. So in my opinion, it's like if the kids don't notice and the administrators don't notice, then why am I spending 20 minutes every morning trying to like erase and write all this crazy stuff on the board? I just didn't do it. And this kind of goes back to the ask forgiveness rather than permission clause. You kind of have to figure out what is your administration really looking for. And oftentimes, if you're new to a building, you can kind of find this out by asking teachers. I typically tried to do what I knew would be checked, but if they didn't care enough to check it, then I wasn't going to waste time on it. My other favorite question to like ask coworkers in a new building is, what happens if you don't do XYZ? And if nothing really happened, then I kind of took my chances. And I literally have never gotten in trouble for not doing the silly extras. I mean, every once in a while, we might get a reminder like, oh, you need to update your bulletin board, but it was never the big deal that they made it seem like it would be. Number 6 is automate as much as possible. I kind of took a similar approach with lesson planning in that I would find cool things online, paste them in, and just copy the whole document over the next week and change up a few details, and nobody ever said anything. And I didn't make it super obvious, but done were the days of making crazy lesson plans from scratch, because even though they would ask us to send them our lesson plans, it was not something that they were really looking at. Now, again, if you have a school that really does and they're going to ask you questions and you can't necessarily use this strategy for lesson planning, but I really tried to see what can be copied and pasted, what can be recycled. And of course, as teachers, you know that that doesn't mean you didn't know what you were doing that day, but taking all the time to write out 10 billion standards and 10 billion I cans. It's for the birds. This can also be really good for like parent communications. I would find templates online, like parent letter templates, and I would have them all in a Google document. That way, if I needed to email a parent, I could just copy and paste and change out the names and maybe add a few details. That way, I didn't feel that pressure of having to think up things to say all the time. I did the same thing. I did mass text all the time through Google Voice so that they didn't have my actual number and so that I could keep records of everything that they said and I said. And it just helped to have all of that pre-done. It saved a ton of time. Number 7 is get students to help you with stuff. Now, this really only works probably like 3rd grade and up. Any teachers of the littles, you can let us know if you have kids do jobs, but I had kids that love to grade, clean, organize. I mean, they just were able to do all of the little tasks that I didn't like doing. And it was a win-win situation because they thought it was fun and felt special. And it was another job that I didn't have to do. And so if you can have your students basically have a job system, you'd be surprised at how many little things they can help you with. Number 8 is grade as much as you can in class, or don't grade things at all. The papers will disappear and no one will ever ask where they went. I know I'm telling like serious teacher secrets right now, but honestly, as I've mentioned in several of my other videos, a lot of things like the grades didn't count. So kind of going over them in class and having kids self-grade gave them feedback and helped them see what was wrong. It made them feel like it counted, but at the same time, I wasn't wasting hours, quote unquote, grading things that didn't really count for a grade. The weirdest thing ever is kids loved grading things in class. It was the strangest thing ever. So you might want to try it. Number 9, one of my favorites. This one is another one people might have some feelings about, but I'm going to say it anyway. Give yourself sub days, quiet days, and work days. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Have you ever had a day where you woke up and you're just like, I want to call in and just get a sub, but for whatever reason you can't? Think about what you would do. You would find lots of independent work and things that students could just focus on, and they would basically do that for the whole entire day. Well, sometimes I would give myself those days, but I was the sub essentially. Sometimes kids like them because they felt like they could work on things in class and get like homework, projects, paper done. But either way, sometimes it gave me a little bit of a break when I was just feeling completely overwhelmed. Now, obviously this isn't something that you're going to do all the time, but it can be kind of like a surprising breath of fresh air. I would, walk around, circulate, make sure kids were doing okay with stuff. It wasn't like I was just like passing out packets and sitting at the desk the whole day, but it just was a way to kind of reestablish calm sometimes. Number 10 is do fun things during your plan time. Several years of teaching gave me really great ways to figure out how to relax during the school year. So in schools where it was okay, a lot of times I would go on a walk for my entire plan time. It was just really nice because it was almost like a recess for me in the middle of the day. Also, there was times where I would read like motivational books or listen to podcasts during my plan time. If I was particularly frustrated, I might read like Reddit stories from other teachers just to know that I wasn't alone. But it was just really nice to kind of decompress some of that stress and kind of feel like a normal human for maybe 30 or 40 minutes. Number 11 is stay out of teacher drama and gossip. Teacher drama could be a video all by itself, but I'm naturally really introverted, so it wasn't really a big deal for me to kind of keep to myself. But sometimes I'm sure you can relate during particularly frustrating years. It's really tempting to just spend your entire breaks gossiping and complaining and just kind of sounding off. And it does feel good to get it off your chest, but then there can just be a negative kind of cloud around you for the rest of the day. So you could try being kind of light and breezy, being low on the drama, and especially with administration. I would not really share anything negative with administration at all. I would just smile and be kind of perky. And you can do that with however your personality is, whatever that looks like for you. And just be low drama. Just try to keep a low profile. And you'd be surprised. I think so many people are so busy that you can just kind of relax. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, number 12. This is another one that people are going to have feelings about. Bribery. I've already mentioned it in some of my other videos, but because we weren't really allowed to have a lot of negative consequences, I used rewards and candy and just anything that I could to try to help kids be motivated, help them get their assignments done, help them behave for observations. I'm just gonna go ahead and admit it. I had to do what I had to do. And it depends on the year and it depends on the group of kids, because some might use this to like try to sabotage you. But some years where, I had a really good relationship with the kids, I would just tell them, hey, if an administrator walks in this room, I want you guys on your best behavior. And if you do well, then everybody gets candy. And I kid you not, it worked. And it was really cute too to like watch them be on their best behavior. But as soon as the administrator would leave, they'd start whispering like, did we do it? Did we get it? And that kind of group peer pressure even helped the naughty kids to like not want to mess it up for everyone, and they wanted candy too. Again, I wish it didn't have to be this way, but it's a tough world, you guys. To me, I would rather give rewards than feel like I'm having to like beg and plead and threaten all day long. If you can find positive things, I think it is better to go that route. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be something immediate. You could have sticker charts or like check boxes, and they can earn quarterly parties or rewards depending on, you know, what you teach and what grade level you're at. But a lot of times the rewards do work pretty well, at least in the short term. Number 13 is guard your time. In the early years of teaching, I would often get dropped off early and picked up like 3 hours after contract time. So sometimes I was literally at school for 10 to 12 hours a day. But eventually I just kind of figured out that that really wasn't working for me too well. So you might just kind of want to try on for size, working only your contract hours. And even if you have some extra work, you can try going to a cafe or going someplace with a better ambiance to get your work done. Or on the flip side, if you would rather say, okay, I'm going to stay 1 hour after school, but then I'm not going to touch any work once I get home, that's cool too. You're just kind of thinking about the amount of time and hours that you're working, and you're deciding what trade-offs are going to be worth it. Number 14 is an easy one. Turn off all your email notifications during non-work hours. I just remember during my teaching days feeling the ping of my phone and seeing the little email icon would just like fill me with adrenaline and stress. But just saving all of that for either like the next morning or the next Monday really takes a load off. Number 15, use all your sick days. And I think it's fine to take mental health days and even maybe a spa day once in a while. You really have to think about teaching as a marathon instead of a sprint. And if you don't take care of yourself, then it's not going to be good for anybody. So don't be made to feel guilty or ashamed about using your days. Number 16 is have fun when possible. This again is going to depend a lot on your school culture and the group and age of your students, but I'm naturally a really kind of fun person, and so I would really utilize different ways to add fun into the day if the students can handle it. So we would have what we called shake breaks, where they were able to just kind of wiggle and move around and get their energy out. And there's lots of little pre-made sites like that have like maybe Zumba for kids or just something that's fun and that lightens the mood of the room, helps kids to get out their energy, and also makes you laugh and smile. I would also joke around a lot with the kids. I would talk in funny accents. I utilized all of my high school theater skills, and I really tried to make sure that I was having fun. And I know that you cannot be like that with every group, but if you do even have some groups like that, it just brings a little bit of joy to your day. And a lot of times it makes it more fun for students. Number 17, don't internalize negativity. This one is probably one of the hardest things on the list. I don't know about you, but I'm like a super sensitive, empathetic person, and I feel like I just am a sponge at absorbing negative things. And so it was really hard when I had parents that were mad at me, when I had like students that didn't like me, when I had administrators that I felt like were out to get me. And that would just really follow me home. It would follow me on the weekends. It would follow me on the holidays. And I was never able to completely get over that, but I did read a lot about like mindsets. Angela Watson is amazing if you've never heard of her. She's got so many great books that I would just devour. I also really liked Linda Cardamus. If you've never heard of her, she's amazing. Also has a ton of books and just podcast, amazing things. But you really want to continue to work on your mindset and work on continuing to tell yourself the truth. That was one of the reasons I started this channel to begin with. I just felt like nobody was saying what was true, and it was making me feel crazy. There are certain things that I've heard of called radical acceptance and radical compassion. Radical acceptance is kind of like where you just realize that it is what it is. Parents are going to be who they're going to be. Your students are going to be who they're going to be. Your district is going to be what it's going to be. And it's not something where you just like completely get cynical and give up in defeat, but it's something where you accept what is so that you can make decisions on what you can change and control rather than being like upset and outraged all the time. And I know for me personally, it was just easy to be in the state of just upset all the time because there was just always crazy stuff going on. But the more you can manage that mindset and say, you know what, that's just how it is. What is there anything I could do to change it? It's better. Radical compassion is a lot about giving compassion to yourself. You think about about, if I had a best friend going through this, what would I tell my best friend? So that way you're not beating yourself up, you're not internalizing people's negative opinions of you. You're just realizing that you are doing the best that you can do. And a lot of times so are other people. All right, number 18 is kind of a funny, embarrassing one, but it is figure out who you want to be your references and butter them up like crazy. I know, it's so cringy. But if you're really thinking about transitioning either out of teaching or to a different school, you really want to do your best to have at least some people that will put in a good word for you, that will be a contact for you. So just make sure that you are being nice to those people, because you don't want to get to the end of the year and have like no bridges left. And obviously you don't want to feel like you're stuck at that particular job because nobody will put in a good word for you. Number 19, prioritize your health. I know, again, this is easier said than done, but one year I joined a gym really close by so that after work I could just go straight to Zumba class and just get out some of that stress. It's also important to do your best to try to be eating healthy and practicing healthy habits, getting your sleep, and just working on your overall well-being. I would also highly encourage you to look into what your insurance offers for free. I was shocked at all the amazing things that a lot of my insurance programs had. Like, most of them had free counseling, at least 6 sessions through EAP, the Employee Assistance Program. But the secret was you could renew those counseling sessions as long as you did it about a different issue. So there were some years that, I don't know, I probably had like 30 free counseling sessions through my insurance. A lot of times they're also going to have like a lot of health incentives, gym discounts, all kind of things. So just really see what your school or district has available and utilize it. Number 20 is keep looking for jobs and keep your hope alive. You also want to make sure that you're working on keeping your resume updated. Sometimes for me, just looking at other jobs helped me to realize that there's a lot of fish in the sea in terms of employment goes. You could also even kind of practice interviewing for some of these jobs and keep your skills up to date. And you could even be looking into like different educational programs or like classes that you can add on. The sky is the limit, but I think sometimes when we're feeling kind of depressed, it can be really easy to just feel stuck in a rut and like you're gonna have to be locked in a job you don't like for the rest of your life. But you guys, that's simply not true. Number 21 is the last one. I thought you might want to throw a book at me if I said this one first, so I saved it for last. But see if you can find teacher inspiration. I know that there's been some years where I just felt so defeated and burnt out and honestly angry that there was nothing in the world that excited me about teaching, and I just felt like so over it. But I would find audiobooks to listen to give me different ideas. I would listen to teaching podcasts, and sometimes it was just enough to keep me going, and it was enough to give me hope and to kind of help me manage my attitude. And your inspiration doesn't even have to be teaching related. As cheesy as it is, you could find like Tony Robbins, or I don't know, just insert your general motivational speaker and make sure you're listening to those kind of things just to keep your spirits lifted and to help you show up in a way that you want to show up. So I know that that was a lot. Thank you if you've stuck with me this far. And again, I would love to hear your ideas and strategies. I'm sure you'll let me know about the ones that you don't agree with. And you know, as my little disclaimer, you might find 3 things on this list that really helps you. You definitely don't have to do all of them. So thank you in advance for liking and subscribing and sharing, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.